Hello, and welcome back to another coffee talk. I am hands-free today. This is new. This is well, it's very similar to how coffee talks used to be, but I have help today. And so my dad and my stepmom are watching Little Landon, so I can hang out and have coffee with you. I just made myself a Colombian Nespresso pod, and I put the caramel macchiato creamer into it, and it's pretty good, I must say. Oh my gosh, I need this energy boost so bad, so bad. I was specifically waiting for this moment to make my next coffee. And there's so much I want to do today. Last week, when I was filming the coffee talk, I had to do it in parts just because my little baby was teething. So there was a lot that I wanted to do last week that I didn't get to. There's some stuff that I want to talk about this week. And so I don't know if this is going to end up being a really long coffee talk. Slow down, girl. I just can't stop drinking this coffee because it's so good and I need it so bad. All right, let's see what mantra of the week we are kicking it off with. Oh yes. Okay, I remember seeing this one last week and thinking this is going to be a good one. Today's mantra card of the week is discovering happiness. I allow myself to be content exactly as I am. I love this card. The coloring of it is perfect for spring. To discover happiness gives me the idea that it is something that is always around us, but that we're not always tuned into. If it's like a frequency and we're like a radio, then we're not always aware of the happiness that is constantly and consistently around us. And that, again, is fair. That's also very human. I don't want that to sound like toxic positivity in the sense of we should always be happy all of the time. But I guess it's more so to say that if you have a goal of being happy, if you wish to be happy in any given moment, then it is there for us to discover. And discover, like when I think of the word discover, what comes to my mind is chiseling away at something and then like a gem or a gemstone coming through, just being like, oh my gosh, there it is. I found it. And that mentally, it's really doing that mentally. It's chiseling away the cloudedness around whatever is keeping you from being happy. And when you tie that into the mantra, I allow myself to be content exactly as I am, that cloudiness would come from anything that's making you feel discontent with yourself. So I ask you, in this moment, is there anything that's making you feel discontent with yourself exactly as you are right now in this moment? I'm going to reflect on that for a second and then I'll give my own honest answer. So, the answer that came to me is one that I think is very common. It's this perpetual feeling that I could always do better. And that feeling comes from a very honest place, I think it comes from a good source of intention. It's not because I don't think I'm good or okay exactly as I am. I think most of us are when asked, like, do you feel good about yourself? Like, hopefully the answer is yes. And if the answer is no, then even more so this conversation is important. But if you were to be like, do you feel like you're a good person, a good human? Do you feel good about the work you do and the things you do in a day? I would say yes. But there's always this thread, this sense, if you will, around me that I could do better. I'm always looking for the ways that I could do better. And the reason why that's important, even just floating that up to my own consciousness, is because in any given moment, especially these days lately where I've been feeling more stress and feeling more just kind of down and out, that's on me in a sense to release that feeling of how I could do better. And that's hard because immediately I grip onto that. Immediately my ego is like, no, we cannot get rid of the part of ourselves that needs to know that we can do a little bit better, because that's the part that's going to help us do better. That's going to push us into trying harder. That's going to make us go that extra mile. And in a sense, that is true. There have been times where just that feeling, that knowing, that notion that I can do a little bit better has pushed me to go for it, to try for it. But when we're going for the goal of happiness, when we're going for the goal of contentment, that comes from feeling grounded and feeling settled and feeling full and fulfilled exactly as you are right now in this given moment. And that doesn't mean that you can't do better or be aware of the areas that you could improve or little things that you could tweak just to lift your experience that much more. There is still space for that. However, discovering happiness in the present moment, in your presence, like in the now, comes from releasing that part of the brain that's stuck in future, and I think like we've talked about this many times, and this isn't my own original thought, but it's just the idea that anxiety is living in the future, depression is living in the past, and contentment, if you will, or true mental health is living in your presence. It's living in the very present moment that's happening right now in front of you, wherever you are, however you're listening or watching this. And so that perpetual feeling that I experience of knowing I could do a little bit better is also a little bit of that perpetual anxiety where I'm living in the future, where I'm trying to get to a point where things maybe feel a bit more comfortable, a bit more organized, a bit more, and these are my words. These are the things that relate to me. So maybe it's different words for you, but what is it that you think would be a little bit better that's leaving you discontent with exactly as you are right now? Another honest answer that came to me, and this is not, I'm saying this just because, again, maybe someone out there can relate to it. And again, I know in my knowing, I am aware that I don't feel bad about the way that I look, but there is this sense of discontentment too. I think especially postpartum and just being really tired lately and feeling really like I'm trying to take care of myself. And that comes with that feeling of I could be doing better at taking care of myself more physically and just like in terms of how I show up, how I appear, how I present myself. Like I went upstairs and I curled my hair and I put on a little bit of makeup for this talk or whatever, but there is that feeling too of, and I think it's more internal, that I feel how much I've been pouring out into life, and I feel like I'm wearing it a little bit. And I can see how tired I am. I can see the little things that haven't been tended to in a while. And so that is also creating this feeling of discontentment with myself exactly as I am. And that part is hard too. Like I don't even really know the answer for it, because if someone else told me that, I would be like, every aspect of you in this stage of your life that you're wearing, like whether it is you're tired because you've been devoted to little children, or you've been devoted to a passion of yours, or you've been working really hard, or you haven't been able to tend to little parts of yourself because your attention has just been elsewhere, and you're wearing that's not always the prettiest stuff to wear. Maybe it doesn't make you feel the prettiest. It doesn't make me feel the prettiest, but allowing myself to be content exactly as I am, I think that comes with a moment to, maybe for me, again, I'm not projecting this out onto anybody. Let me know your thoughts, but to just meditate on why you feel yourself presenting the way you are. Like maybe, I have some bags under my eyes and my skin is looking a little dehydrated and rough, but at the same time, I'm also wearing the love that I am emulating and radiating and receiving in this stage of life that I'm in right now. And so that can feel pretty without it really needing to look pretty. Gosh, guys, I don't know. Because again, I'm coming back to that sense, that feeling of like, I could do better though. I could spend a few more minutes doing this. I could tweeze my eyebrows today. I could drink a gallon of water and I could probably look a little bit better. And that is keeping me in a state of discontentment. It's not letting me discover the happiness in the moment. So, damn. The last few weeks of the Matt Kahn mantras have been giving me a lot of food for thought, because they are really highlighting to me the places in my mind that I might not even be aware are background tapes of the subconscious that I'm looping. Like, I can do a little bit better. I can look a little bit prettier. I could tend to myself a little bit more. There are things I could do to feel more content. And that goes so against my knowing in all of the philosophy books I've read and all of the different genres that I have dipped into, how much I like to believe, I like to think of myself as someone that can feel content exactly as I am in any given moment. But it's making me realize how much my ego isn't feeling so good lately, perhaps. I guess what I'm landing on here is that it's not wrong to see and be aware of the areas in which you could pour a little bit more into, you could bring a little bit more presence to, and perhaps even that I could see that as like messages from my subconscious, a little nudge from my essence, my spirit, whatever we want to call those things, my intuition, that might be saying like, oh, you haven't really had as much time to tend to yourself. Maybe you should make that happen. But when it becomes the default lens, when that becomes your default loop of thought, of always looking for the ways that you can improve and do better, that's when I think it hijacks our ability to discover happiness in any given moment. And when the goal is, if your goal is today to try and discover as much happiness as possible, then take the little nudges from your brain that say, well, we could be doing this and we could be doing that, and that would make us happier, that would make us more content, and say, well, thank you for that information. It's very valuable information. Those are areas that I can devote myself to working on and pouring more into. But then is it possible for us to strip that away once we've allowed the anxiety brain to be like, okay, thank you, I've got that. I'm going to put that here. I'm going to put that down on a list. I'm going to put that in my planner. I'm going to drop that down in a journal. And then I'm going to come back to now, and I'm going to see how happy I can feel and how full I can feel right here, right now. I go through cycles with this. And interestingly enough, this is also making me realize how much spring tends to bring this side out of me, because the feeling I have right now with spring is so motivating. It's so inspiring because I am looking at all of these little areas that I feel I could do a little bit better in and feeling a drive for them. But the truth is that happiness isn't going to come from needing to improve myself. Growth and contentment can coexist. Feeling content is the key to unlocking the energy or the frequency of happiness. Can I just feel fully content with myself exactly as I am? Yes. And can I also hold space for the growth that I'm excited about and that I'm looking forward to? Yes. Like, is there a way to even feel content with the growth that I'm striving towards? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, that growth and contentment can coexist. Both of those frequencies can come together and create a sense of joy, contentment, fulfillment, and motivation at the same time. Ultimately, I feel like this has been a good mantra for this week, because it's making me question whether or not I'm unknowingly making myself feel like I have to earn my happiness. Use this, I guess, as a little check-in to see if you're using those things that are leaving you feeling discontent as things you must do to earn a sense of joy and happiness, because that is where I want to be. That's where I'm going to use this as inspiration to be aware of the places in my life where, as much as I'm excited and motivated and looking forward to working on improving and developing more and further, at the same time, I want to do that from a place of joy. I want to do that from a place of happiness. In fact, I feel like when we do that, when we grow and when we improve upon ourselves, but we do that from a place of centered contentment with ourselves, it's like we're not trying to better ourselves because we feel like we need to earn our sense of value or earn our sense of our right to be happy. But instead, when we do things from that happy place, I feel like that is to me the energy that I want to emulate and that I would love to operate on more consistently. Okay, I'm going to read what the deck book says, as Matt Kahn wanted it to be known. When happiness is discovered, you are inspired, excited, and passionate about the gift of being alive. Yes, like that, exactly. That is the energy that I want to be improving with, is inspired energy, excited energy, passionate energy that I'm using to generate that growth from, and just feeling the gift of being alive. Okay, there is a willingness to open your heart to the mystery of each moment, whether you're getting what you want or witnessing unexpected outcomes. The discovery of happiness frees you from needing life to bring you more of this or less of that. I'm going to need to repeat that one. The discovery of happiness frees you from needing life to bring you more of this or less of that. Like that I need to hear that. The true joy of being yourself has dawned. Damn. And again, like, two things can be true. The true joy of being yourself is what we're unlocking here. And that includes the versions of yourself that can be overworked, overtired, stressed out, and trying to not romanticize times in our lives where we genuinely have the right to feel off balance or output, if you will. But it's even just like, again, if you think about it from the gift of life, like if I am 90 years old and I'm on my deathbed and I was told that I could have a day back in my life where, yes, I am stressed, and yes, I am tired, and yes, there's a million things for me to do on my to-do list. However, I've been given the gift of that day back. My perspective on that day would be so different than being the person that's just kind of waking up and in it because it's been my norm. I would still feel tired, stressed, and have a lot to do, but I would still look at it through the lens of, the gift of life, feeling happy as I get to go about things, getting to see my kids little again. Would love to hear your thoughts on the mantra if you feel like sharing. The Healing Mantra deck was my favorite deck up until this Christmas, where I got the Green Witch Oracle deck. This one is by Erin Murphy Hiscock, author of The Green Witch, and it's been illustrated by Sarah Richard, and it is such a beautiful deck. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily self-conscious, but I have definitely been feeling a very natural call to parts of me that I remember having since I was a little girl, and parts of me that have evolved into my womanhood and my motherhood. And a lot of it is feeling very called to, I'm going to use the term earth magic, but what I really mean is just the beauty of cycles, nature. I mean, Mother Nature at large, but also just the little symbols in nature. When you think of mushrooms and their role on the planet, and all of the different animals and their role on the planet, just the different seasons, the different times of day, the different phases of the moon, like all of these things have been really speaking to me since winter. Like they've always spoken to me, but since winter, I have been feeling so drawn in a way that I can't describe the feeling. It's just very deeply intuitive, and it's just calling to me, and I'm just kind of leaning in and answering it. And the only part of that would ever make me feel self-conscious talking about is just that, like, I still to this day will get comments that, that kind of, I'm not a lot, but just the odd person that'll say that is somehow evil, or, we get people. It's common on the internet, of course, but you just run into mindsets that perhaps are coming riddled in their own fear or what the things they believe in have taught them. And so I'm a very open-minded person. I'm also a very open-spirited person. So what calls to my spirit, I think, is natural to me. And I don't expect anybody else to. I don't only listen to people whose spirit translates the same way to them, so I can listen to people that believe different things and that use different symbols and that use different rituals and use different ways of generating a sense of devotion and faith and love, and ultimately just like a higher sense, a sense of evolution, a sense of joy, a sense of radiation of like lifting the planet and working with the beauty and the gratitude of life. And so people that use different religions to do that, different spiritual practices to do that, it doesn't put me off, I guess is what I'm saying. The only time it does put me off is when I get comments like that, where it's like I'm being condemned and told that I'm wrong, when I know my intention and I know my spirit and I know my intuition and I know what feels good or even neutral versus what feels evil. And like even working with dark, like when I work with my shadows, when I work with my ego, when I try and do shadow work, again, I don't feel like I'm working with the devil. I don't feel like I'm working with evil. I laugh only because that feels so silly to say, but for some, like truly that would be a belief that working with shadow energy or working with your own shadows. Gosh, I did not mean for this to turn into like some kind of religious talk, but it is interesting. Just recently, if anybody follows Justin Bieber's a fellow Canadian. His birthday's a day after mine, and we live where his hometown is not far from my hometown. So to just kind of expose myself here for a second, a couple of years ago, I realized that him and I probably have pretty close birth charts because we were born within 24 hours of each other in similar locations. And so I've always had a soft spot for Justin Bieber, and especially lately, I find that I still follow him on things, and I can sense that perhaps he might be going through something. I don't hold anybody to their birth chart or their natal chart or whatever, but it is interesting to see how those patterns can represent certain things going on in people's lives. Wow, this is a tangent, but I'm just going to keep rolling with it. So anyway, Justin Bieber recently posted to his Instagram story, and it was something along the lines of just feeling like he never deserved the fame, the fortune, the good things in his life, because he always thought or felt like if only people could see what my thoughts are like, then they would see how bad of a person I am. And it's interesting because, again, as someone that has just kind of witnessed or observed someone like Justin Bieber from afar, I've gone through phases where I haven't necessarily vibed with the guy, but I've always kind of rooted for him, if that makes sense, just because of those little ties that I just explained to you. And it was interesting to watch him move very devotingly into his faith and his religion. And I, again, wholeheartedly respect it. And I can see how that may, at certain points in his life and through the lyrics and his music, really gave him an anchor to hold on to and a sense of love that came from someone like Jesus. Wow, this is an interesting talk today, but here we are. But the story was interesting to me because it brought something out for myself. So I went to Catholic school, I was baptized, I was confirmed. And I would say that if anything, it just gave me a lot of food for thought as I got older of what parts of it stuck with me and what parts of it didn't, what parts I think that there was a lot of gold in, like a lot of true, that golden rule, a lot of wisdom, a lot of great teachings, and what parts I thought felt a bit off or a bit too manipulative or controlling in terms of being Catholic. And so all of this to say, the one thing that I realized reading Justin Bieber's story the other day, where he was like, if only people could see my thoughts and they could see how bad of a person I am, how much I don't deserve these things. That is the part of, I don't want to say something like trauma. It wasn't traumatic per se, but I guess my own inner core, the being that is me, that I'm experiencing as an adult on the planet that was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school, is that a lot of the Catholic teachings comes from a place of identifying with core shame, that if you have a bad thought, then that's shameful, that's sinful. And I don't even know how we got into this conversation. I guess it was coming from talking about working with my shadows, but I would say in my own spirituality, I don't necessarily identify as Catholic so much anymore. I do believe that a lot of the teachings of the Bible are beautiful. I do believe in the teachings of someone like Jesus. I just think that there's different ways to interpret those things and work those things into the wisdom of life. And I also find that there are a lot of other deeply profound individuals out there, like the Buddha. Oh gosh, the Yoga Sutras written by Patanjali, and I may have mispronounced that, but just that there are other individuals and philosophers and wise Marcus Aurelius. There's so many, and a lot of women too. You know, I'm aware that I've just named a lot of men, and gosh, now I want a tangent on this other piece of content that I found where someone described it's no nonsense spirituality. I recently followed her, and I don't agree with everything she says, but a lot of the stuff she says I find is super interesting. Like even just the way that religions treat women's cycles and how you're like impure when you're on your cycle, and yet that is literally the gift of life. Like just so much to unpack here, and it's not the conversation I necessarily wanted to have today, and yet here I am. But just coming back to this idea that I don't love this notion or this way to kind of control someone's spirit and almost dampen someone's spirit by making them believe that they are eternally shameful because they sin, or eternal sinners. Like, yes, of course, we all work with shadow sides of ourselves. We're all beautifully flawed, is something my aunt would say. When my Aunt Carrie is visiting recently, and her and I got into these kinds of conversations, but we're all beautifully flawed. I don't love the idea that we're all, sinful. I'm not saying I disagree. I just think that there's another way to look at that. And so I guess just a lot lately, a lot of the stuff, because it's been coming to me. People have been commenting on my content that are religious in a different way or spiritual in a different way. And I love that because it gives me a new perspective to look at things through. And also I love the bravery of someone coming forward and being open to having conversations, because a lot of the times they don't necessarily, some of the longer comments I get, they don't actually reject what I'm saying or make me feel condemned for believing or practicing differently. They're just like, I believe in this, or I am, I truly find my love through Jesus. And I also don't condemn someone for going that route. It was just interesting to, again, first of all, Justin Bieber's story made me realize myself how much I always feel like I'm always doing something wrong, and like how lately in my own life, as a woman especially, I'm really working on that part of myself that always feels like I need to make myself small. I need to feel bad for being myself, or like I'm constantly doing something wrong, or that I'm always in trouble when I'm not. And that comes a lot from that experience that I had growing up, that being told that we're all sinners and you're always sinning, and that there's so much shame in sin. And just, it was sad to me to read Justin Bieber's story and realize that like he still carries so much shame. And I don't know his story. I don't know his life lessons or choices, but it's what awakened in me was like, wow, yeah, that's true. A lot of my own religious teachings growing up came from believing that there's so much shame around being a flawed individual and having a dark side to us. And another really cool part of, I don't necessarily practice witchcraft. I don't even know what to call my spirituality, because I have little pieces of a lot of things that I find have spoken to me, and not in a wishy-washy way where it's surface level, but more so that I find little specks of truth in everything. And I think everybody's spirit moves through the planet almost like a fingerprint, unique and individually. Anyway, I don't know why I'm constantly disclaiming myself, but there you go. It's like I already feel like I'm saying something wrong or doing something wrong. But all that to say that, yeah, I just spiritually, I also love working with my shadow, and I don't want to, that little thread in witchcraft, or just in general in spirituality that I'm seeing lately too, is that we try to always be love and light. And I'm aware of that thread in myself. And again, making space for the power that comes from our shadow side, the power that comes from our darkness, and not in a way that we find power in being bad, or we find power in our shame, or we find power in doing things wrong, but more so that there is a lot of evolution that can come from doing shadow work. And I don't believe that in my lifetime I'm going to be able to reach true enlightenment in the ways that I've come to understand it, but I never want to stop heading in that direction. I'm always trying to head in towards, my goal is, or my compass is always going to be pointing towards enlightenment. And I don't know if I'll get there. I think that there's so much in modern day, when you live in society and you want to be a part of the modern living, there is a lot of that pulls at our attention and keeps me from really devoting myself to my own spiritual evolution, my own spiritual enlightenment. But I'm never not heading in that direction, and my compass is never not pointing that way. Hope you guys enjoyed today's coffee talk. My coffee is cold. I am cheersing you the last sip. I hope spring has been kicking off well and nice for you. And I will chat with all of you guys in the next one. Cheers.